So first we have Erika Buenrrustro. She is a native of Mexico City, Mexico, and a current resident of DeQueen, Arkansas. Erika Buenrrustro currently serves as Director for Student Success and Enrichment at UA Cossatot. She received her Associates of Arts degree in 2006 from UA Cossatot, Bachelor's degree in Human Resources Development in 2008, and Master of Education from UA Fayetteville in 2016. She has also completed 18 graduate level credits towards a second master's in Romance language from the University of New Orleans, allowing her to also serve as adjunct while teaching Spanish for UA Cossatot. Erika oversees the GAG program, the campus food pantry, as well as several other institutional and statewide programs and initiatives. In her spare time, Erika loves to spend time with her family and friends, as well as salsa dancing with her husband. And next we have Juanita Franklin, a first-generation American of Mexican descent originally from California. Juanita Olivares Franklin is a director of the LIFE program and associate director of Hispanic and Latino outreach at Northwest Arkansas Community College. In addition to her primary role, she is also the advisor for the Dreamers Resource Student Program. Though her various roles, she works to help students grow and sharpen their leadership skills, as well as connect students to volunteer opportunities. As a first-generation college student herself, Juanita's passion is to help underreserved, under-resourced, and underrepresented students to help them achieve their dreams of going to college or whatever dreams they have for their future. Juanita is active in advocating for unreserved students and their families, as well as for various social justice issues. Juanita currently lives with her husband, Greg, in Northwest Arkansas. We also have Marcos Santiago, a native of Hope, Arkansas, graduated from Hope High School in 2014. During his tenure in high school, Marcos attended Arkansas Boys State and was recognized as an Arkansas Boys State Representative Government Founding Contributor. Upon graduation, Marcos furthered his education at the University of Arkansas, Hope-Texarkana, and in 2018, he completed an Associate's of Arts in Information Technology. Currently, Marcos is a telecommunications specialist at UAHT. While working at UAHT, Marcos has served on the UAHT Chancellor Search Committee and currently serves on the UAHT Chancellor's Taskforce on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. During his free time, Marcos enjoys functional fitness and competing in CrossFit competitions. He is also co-owner of a small business in Hope, Arkansas. Okay, so we're gonna start with the conversation and ask a question. So first, I want to start with Erika. How important to you is your racial, ethnic, or cultural identity, and why?
Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me? Sorry. I'm sorry, Jahida. I lost connection. You were asking me how important it is for me. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So it's particularly important because it helps me understand that worlds differ from my very own. And it also gives me a better understanding, which will help me engage with the community that I serve, and also because it creates partnerships and in some cases helps integrate social justice. And that's why I feel like it is important.
Okay, same question for you, Juanita. How important to you is your racial, ethnic, or cultural identity, and why?
Thank you. So it's very important to me. I think one of the big reasons for me is just a real personal reason. Being a first-generation American, I'm actually the first of my parents' 7 children that was born in the U.S. So to me, my racial identity is important to me, both my Mexican side and my American side. They both really are. I grew up kind of speaking both languages. Really, Spanglish is my first language, and often is one that I still go to in working with students. But for me, it's a reminder of my privilege. Again, being born in the U.S. And with that privilege that comes so much responsibility to be able to serve my community, especially my Latinx community. So for me, it's something that is important to me, and it's also a way for me to stay connected to my parents who are now passed. But it's just, like I said, a reminder of kind of where I come from, even though I did not come from Mexico myself. My family does, and that is something that's very important to me. So it also helps me connect, like I said earlier, with the students that I work with, to be able to just relate with them or for them to relate with me.
Okay, Marcos, same question.
To me, it is very important because primarily it's shaped me into the person that I am today. And in a sense, it makes me unique and gives me perhaps a different perspective on life and traditions, coming from Mexico. So it is very important to me, both my Mexican side and also my American side.
Okay, Juanita, I want to ask you, why do you think institutions celebrating the respective cultures of its students, employees, and community is important?
One of the main reasons I think it's so important is because it helps, like when we celebrate different ethnicities, different cultures, especially that of our students, as you're saying, it helps us educate the rest of the community, whether it's the campus community or a greater community. And it also helps students feel comfortable, and it shows them, we often say here at NWAC, we often say, in NWAC hay un lugar para ti, there's a place for you at NWAC. But we want students to be able to see that when they come here as well. So for them to be able to see signage in Spanish, for example, for them to be able to see a Latina that works here. It's important in that way. So even in those ways, in language, in visual cues, that is a way of celebrating. Also in, like right now during Hispanic Heritage Month, our own Student Government Association has a couple of Latinos on their team, but they are making it a point to make sure that they are doing different things throughout this month to bring attention to the importance of celebrating these cultures. So again, I think the main thing for me is that it helps our students and their families see that indeed there is a place for them here, and that they are important, and that we see them.
Okay, we're gonna move on with Marcos to answer the question.
Sure. I think institutions celebrating the respective cultures of its students, employees, and communities is important because it gives those respective bodies a sense of belonging, and it's something that the students or just the faculty and staff can relate to. So it makes them feel, represented in the institution, seeing someone that looks, similar to them and they can kind of relate to.
Okay, moving on to Erika.
And my answer is also very similar to what Marcos and Juanita have mentioned. It creates a sense of belonging for several of our students. In some of the student groups that we have, it's Cultural Awareness Month this month for Hispanics. And so what we're doing is we're sharing, we're proud of our culture. And so we're excited to share that with other student bodies. And then also, for example, and I remember going back to whenever I was actually coming to college, because I graduated in 2014 and I came to UAHT Cossatot. I was actually one of the very few that were Hispanic on campus. And then I know for sure there was nobody in faculty that actually looked like me. And so I understand now that by actually creating a sense of belonging, by having staff that looks like the students that you are trying to represent, if you're trying to represent your community, it creates a sense of belonging. And also we're talking about trust. And so, and because I feel like as an institution of higher ed, that is important for us to also focus on how do we get to a point to where our students trust us and they know who to come to. And so it's just making that connection so that students know who is there for them and who can they reach out for additional assistance or help.
Okay, so this next question, we're going to start with Marcos. So the question is, across the country, there has been a decline in Hispanic student enrollment. In your opinion, what attributes to low enrollment of Hispanic students? How can two-year institutions in Arkansas be of better service of recruiting, retaining, and graduating Hispanic students?
I think for the most part is to ensure that we're getting the Hispanic population enrolled in these institutions, especially two-year institutions, is getting the parents engaged more than anything. Let them know that there's resources and opportunities for them to take advantage of. And sometimes, they're just not aware of these opportunities that, especially that two-year institutions have. And I think primarily we need to target, especially in the Hispanic community, is target the parents of the Latinos or in general, just to make them aware.
Okay, same question to Erika, but I want you to kind of ask, kind of tell us how we can recruit more Hispanics on our campuses.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you, Juanita. So to help answer that question, I think we need to start thinking, we need to start creating the conditions that foster student success. And I really believe that it plays an important role when you're talking about asking the right questions. Who's at the table? As part of initiatives, I know that several times, I know that when we're going to do an initiative or we're trying to focus on a specific group, we try to have people at the table that can represent this specific group. In this case, we're talking about Hispanics. So be at the table, have people that represent that community that you're trying to serve. Initiatives wise, it's important to focus on recruitment and retention. I know that, for example, at UA Cossatot, we were trying to reach that 25% Latino number. And so what did they do? The first thing that they did was they actually hired somebody that was Hispanic, that was bilingual, that would be out there at the forefront recruiting students. And I was actually the second one that actually came on board when that happened. And I will tell you this, it was always me and a coworker. And a lot of the Latinos, as soon as they would know that I was bilingual or that I spoke Spanish or that I spoke their language, it created a sense of, oh, I can actually ask questions. And so when it comes to recruiting, that's one of those recommendations that I have, as well as, now let's talk about retention. Retention wise, look at your faculty and staff. Are you representing the community that you serve? I know that, for example, in DeQueen, I'm from DeQueen, Arkansas, and currently we are at more than half of the Latino of the population of DeQueen is Latino. We're actually at 60%. And so we've got to start asking questions such as, faculty, how do we get more faculty that looks like the community that we are trying to serve? And so by thinking along those lines, what you're actually doing is also inspiring students by saying, if they come on campus and they see somebody that looks like them, they're going to say, if they can do it, I can too. And so as a college, that is what as a person that has been working in higher ed now for 6 years, I highly recommend that we start thinking about having people at the table where we can have those conversations happen and actually begin those initiatives with those people in mind as well.
Okay, same question to you, Juanita, but I kind of want to know a little bit about the program you have at your college and how it better serves your college, and if, ideas on if we could get it started in another college.
Yes, thank you. I love talking about the LIFE program. So LIFE is a program that we started here at NWAC in 2012. And LIFE stands for Learning, Improvement, Fun, and Empowerment. And the purpose, the goal of this program is to do outreach to high school students, really zeroing in, focusing in on those students that are underserved, underrepresented, first generation Latinos. What we really want to do is not just to get them to come to college, right? I mean, that's not the goal. It's to help them persist, help them succeed, help them, graduate, right? And move on to a four-year school if that's what they want to do. But the way that we do it, though, is very personal. It's very much centered on relationship building. The reason that it works so well and has been so successful is because of how we actually do the outreach. I have all the information. I know exactly what to tell these students, why they should go to college, how it will better their family. I know what to say to the parents, all of those things. And as I often say to the staff at the high schools, your students, I know, will sit there and listen to me respectfully. They will listen and be respectful, but they're not going to really hear me. So the way that we do it is we have 8 mentors. These are students that are here at NWAC, they're college students that were just in high school 1 or 2 years ago. They all identify as Latinx. They all are first generation college students. They all have the same questions that a lot of these students and their parents have right now, right? And they've just gone through this. They were just in high school. They just were wondering, how am I going to pay for college? They just were wondering, gosh, I'm undocumented. I can't get financial aid. What am I going to do? My grades aren't good enough. My English isn't perfect. They've had all of those doubts and those fears and those obstacles, but they got connected with us and came to our program, listened, they got connected to our staff and faculty here at NWAC. And once they've come and enrolled at NWAC, then we stay connected with them. We help them be successful. We have them do check-ins with us. We make sure that they're connected to resources. We talk to their parents a lot, answer all of those questions that sometimes they're embarrassed to ask somebody else. They feel that they're dumb. Many of our parents of our students that we work with did not go to school. Many did not even finish high school. And so they're embarrassed oftentimes because they don't see it as they're ignorant of how things work. They see it as, oh, I'm dumb, I don't know enough, right? So we try to empower them as well so that they have the information and they understand how this crazy higher ed stuff works. Because it can be, crazy. Financial aid, FAFSA, that could be so hard, right? We all know that. It's hard for us sometimes to explain it. So imagine a parent who maybe does not have a higher level of education. It's hard for them to understand it all. So making sure that they have the understanding and that they have somebody that they can come to. That's what my goal is for these families, is to be that person that I did not have when I was graduating from high school, that's asking them those questions. What do you want to do? Do you have a plan of how you're going to pay for it? Oh, you're undocumented. Well, hey, look, there are some scholarships for you too. So building relationships and keeping those relationships going so that those parents and those students know that they have somebody to come and ask, because we all know that first generation college students are less apt to ask for help when they need it, unless they have some relationship started. If they have that started, they're more apt going to come knock on my door, going to send me that email to say that they need help. So I think, again, so much of it is just building relationships and keeping those connections going.
Thank you. That sounds like a really good program. So we're going to move on to ask Erika. What barriers, if any, have you experienced in higher education?
As an employee of the college, a couple of the barriers that we're currently experiencing is scholarships for our Latino population, and I'm sure that's everywhere else. Unfortunately, some of our DACA recipients do not qualify for federal aid, financial aid, and so therefore trying to encourage them and provide the assistance that they also need is a challenge. I know that we work with HWOA, they provide some scholarships, and then we also do a lot of fundraising. Talking about initiatives, one of the things that we actually implemented or actually started doing about 4 or 5 years ago to help students and also providing scholarships for them is because we can't use any money that is from the government for this specific group. But I thought maybe if we created a festival, if we did a Cinco de Mayo. And so that's what we end up doing, is just getting very creative in how we fundraise, so that students that do not qualify for federal aid would qualify for these scholarships. And so now this is our 4th, 5th year of Fiesta Fest. It's called Fiesta Fest now. It started out as Diversity Fest. It's where we highlight Cinco de Mayo, and it started out on campus. And then soon enough, it got so big that now it's a community event. It was actually in one of our magazines, and I'll show you guys, because I'm so proud. It actually made this magazine, Arkansas Total, Arkansas Total, which is a fairly new magazine that just came out. It's a bilingual magazine, and it is made possible by the Arkansas Business Publishing Group. And so Fiesta Fest is highlighted in here. We usually have at least 2,000 people show up for the festival. And what we're doing is we're all working together. The community itself as a group is working together to fundraise money for students of the college. And so that is amazing when you see everybody on board and everybody's willing to help. And so that is unfortunately one of the barriers that we face year to year, but we are trying to do what we can to fundraise in that matter. So that's what I would share in this with your question, Jahida.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna move on with Juanita, and the same question. It's, what barriers have you witnessed for Hispanic students in higher education?
Very similar to what Erika said, but for me, again, it's just going back to the parents and information and understanding how things work. Oftentimes I hear from parents, they'll come to me in August, like the first week in August, and classes are getting ready to start, and they're so excited because their hijos all registered for school. They're going to be starting at NWAC and they're ready to go. And they want to know, Señora Juanita, no hay becas? Are there any scholarships? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that ship has sailed. It's too late for this year, right? Or they want to make a payment plan, and it's now past the optimal payment plan period, right? Now they're having to put down a 33 or 50% down payment. So it's getting the information to the parents so that they can support their students. I also hear from moms often is, my comadre told me that my daughter cannot get any scholarships because she's undocumented. That's not true. There's a lot of scholarships out there, actually. But again, it's getting them the information ahead of time so that they're not struggling trying to figure things out. I've had too many students realize too late that there aren't any scholarships, and they have to wait. They have to maybe sit the year out, or at least the semester, until they can figure out a better plan to be able to pay for college. So again, it's the information, and going back a little bit to one of our previous questions about what can we do, and similar to what Erika said about being at the table, right? But also reaching out to these families and doing things like focus groups to ask them, how can we get you this information? What is the best way to communicate with you? We found out a lot of our Latino families want actual mail. They want mail that's going to come to their post office box or to their mailbox, not email so much, right? So finding out, what is the best way to communicate with you? When is the best day that we can meet with you? We're very big here at NWAC about talking about meeting them where they are. So I often will go meet with families on a Saturday morning. That's the only time that works. But I think it's just finding the right people for different positions on your campus that are maybe willing to maybe just go a little bit above and beyond to connect out in the community, and not just wait for people to come to you, but for you to go to them, go to, talk to Tyson to see about going to meet with their employees during their breaks or at lunchtime. Just finding the best time and the best place to meet with them to give them the information that they need.
It's getting very creative, Juanita. It's thinking different. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you got to think outside of the box. Absolutely.
Yeah. And can I add to Marco, I don't mean to get into your time, but I feel like it's important because we may have people on this call that could benefit from this if they're not aware. I know that CARES Act Money 3, DACA students can benefit from that now. With this administration, that's one thing that they're allowing. And so I know that with previous CARES Act money, it only had to be for U.S. citizens and residents of the United States. With CARES Act 3, I believe that's the one that allows even DACA recipients to benefit. So just putting that out there.
That is correct. And I encourage you folks to talk to your leadership to make sure that it's happening.
Yes.
That it's getting to all the students that deserve it.
That's awesome. So next we're gonna ask the same question to Marcos.
About the barriers that I faced, like they kind of covered it overall, but the barrier I faced in higher education was the cost of tuition, simply because I am a DACA recipient, and which for those that don't know, this stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And I was in a special circumstance to where I couldn't receive financial aid. I couldn't apply for those scholarships. And at that time, those scholarships that I was able to apply for, they're all, competitive. Everyone was, was out to get them. So when I attended UAHT, the only scholarships that I could apply for were private scholarships or the foundation scholarships. And luckily, I was able to receive some help there. But as some of you may or may not know, DACA recipients get charged out-of-state tuition, which is, like almost double the price as regular tuition. So the only scholarships I was able to get were those private scholarships, and I was able to attain my associate's degree because of that. And I just want to kind of give a shout out to the DEI Taskforce for putting on a movie night on October 2nd, which they'll be streaming the movie Coco, and it'll be free to the community and the public. And what they'll be accepting donations, and with these donations, will be funded. We'll fund a scholarship that'll be awarded to a recipient or a student of Hispanic or Latin descent. So I know how much that can help because I've been there personally. So I urge y'all, to attend this movie and try to help out, someone of Hispanic or Latin descent, this way. So that was my barrier.
Okay, does the audience have any questions for any of either Marcos, Juanita, or Erika?
I would like to add, if y'all don't mind, I've been asked in the past, Erika, what can we do to better serve our Latino population? And I'm going to connect it to what Marco said, because Marcos, it takes a lot from anybody to come out and say, I'm a DACA recipient, because not everybody will just be open to talking about their legal status. And so I commend you for that, Marcos. So thank you so much. But one way that I always answer that question is be advocates for your students. Try to understand what their needs are. And I know that when we started talking about DACA on campus, actually very few knew what DACA was. And so as an advocate for my students, one of the first things that I did was, okay, maybe I need to bring an expert on campus to talk about the topic with faculty, staff, because it affects everybody. It affects all the departments. And so be an advocate for them. If you're able, or if you have ties in Little Rock, or anybody that has or is able to vote, I know that right now there's a big push, and I know we can't change the immigration law. I understand that. But what I am saying is, as an advocate for students, maybe we could advocate for them and say, hey, when it comes time to voting, consider giving our DACA recipients permanent status, because Some of you may know, some of you may not, but DACA recipients have to apply every 2 years. They have to renew their work permit every 2 years. We're talking about $485 every 2 years, plus lawyer fees every 2 years. And so, and it's also something else about DACA recipients is they're always at limbo. They could lose at any time because it's only a work permit. So I need to advocate for students and hopefully that way they can find a permanent solution. And that way that would solve the issue of funding, or even if they're not able to apply for federal aid, you know, in this way they could. So anyway, when I'm asked, what can I do? That's what I recommend.
I'd like to piggyback on that, Erika. I don't know where everybody is from that's on this call, but if you can look, I don't know if you have on your campus, if you have any kind of a student club or organization that is for Latinx students or for Dreamers, for undocumented students. If you don't, maybe ask around to see if a student wants to start one and maybe be their advisor. I know for us, we have been able to do a lot with our student club. We are now called the Dreamers Resource Group at NWAC, and we help a lot lower the out-of-state tuition here at NWAC just to make it more affordable. We have taken students to Little Rock to testify for example, for DACA recipients to be able to take the state nursing licensure exam. You may or may not know that before they were able to go through the whole nursing program. They had DACA status, so that meant that they were authorized to work legally in the US. However, they could not work as a nurse because they couldn't sit for the state license exam. That was ridiculous. I took students, I testified, and I had 2 students that also testified. Now we're working on the teaching credential as well. But also just to let your students know, if you are an ally, I know I'm not gonna assume that everybody is, but if you are, make sure that your students know that you are. I know at most schools here at NWAC, we don't ask students their legal status, but I know the legal status of many of my students because they tell me, because they know that they can. For one thing is, well, I'm the advisor for the club, but also on my door, I have this sign. I don't know if you can see it or not. And you see these signs all over our campus. These are signs that faculty and staff have up in their offices, on their office doors, so that students know. So if they ever feel that they want to tell somebody, they know that that person's an ally. We also do fundraising. We go, I mean, I'll go anywhere that I'm invited, and I invite myself sometimes just to come and talk about what does it mean to be undocumented? What's the difference between being undocumented and having DACA status? I go speak at churches, at civic groups. Anybody that will listen, I will go and talk to them. And as a matter of fact, it always ends up helping us in so many ways. I don't go to ask for money. I just go so that people know. And really what I'm looking for is for people to vote in a way that will help these students when it's time. But every single time, I either leave with a check or a check gets to me later on because they want to help a student renew their DACA. 3 months ago, I was told by our foundation office that an anonymous donor gave $10,000 to our club to be able to support DACA students. So it's just getting the word out, finding those students that are comfortable sharing their status and that will talk about it, because we know that by sharing personal stories, that is how we make change. That is how people learn about our differences and about our different situations, and how, you know, how we as an institution, how a community is affected by this population of people. And again, just getting people to understand and to listen, I think really makes a huge difference.
Okay, we have a question from Shalinda Whitfield. It says, in the past, I have had students who talk to me about the stress or dealing with the loss of family and friends due to deportation. Do you have any advice or resources I can refer them to for additional assistance?
I can actually recommend a couple of things on that. I know that as a college, if you have a college counselor, that would probably be the first point of stop for them. Also, the Mexican consulate. The Mexican consulate is there to represent anybody that is from Mexico, and in this case, if they're from El Salvador, maybe the consulate from El Salvador, they're going to be your go-to, organization. That's what I'm going to recommend in cases like this. That's one of the things that when you talk about deportation, and it just makes me, it's hard. A lot of Latino students, they have so many things already against them when they begin college. A lot of them have to work jobs full-time, and then they still have to probably take care of grandpa, grandma, siblings, whatever it might be. And then on top of that, if somebody's deported, it's just one of those things where you just want to hug them and say it'll be fine. But I mean, it's just, you can't help what's going on with our legal system and whatnot. So yes, to answer your question, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so passionate about that topic because I know that firsthand. We've had several students on campus that have faced that, and it's hard. But the Mexican consulate is definitely one of those that I would consider an ally for these students.
I'll answer that as well. And same thing, we do have a really we have a really good counseling and wellness office here at NWAC. We've really grown it, and students are really using it a lot. I know for me, because in our culture, oftentimes it's not something that we do. I know growing up, we didn't, tell our problems to a stranger, right? So it's not something that's like really popular in our culture, but that's changing. I take the students over there to help them make the appointment. Sometimes it's just that connection that will make the difference, but also just listening, just saying to that student, I'm so sorry this happened, let them talk to you, right? But also check your community to see if there are any resources, check your campus to see if there are resources. This is another reason that oftentimes it's important to have these types of clubs on campus. Faculty and staff know here, I'm not a counselor, but I'm a good listener, and they send students to me all the time. We had several students that lost family members due to COVID also, and also deportation. So I think it's listening, but finding that resource. Counseling is one of the best resources that I would connect them to.
We have a question from Shauna Biddle. And I know Marcos answered the question, but it's, did you all face any problems going through college in the classroom or post-college?
I'll talk a little to that. So I grew up in California in a small farming community, and my family was one of the few families that lived there year-round. My father was a foreman of a ranch there. And we had a lot of Latinos that were in the area, but they were more seasonal workers. So they were only in school part of the time, or they were there in the summer, so they were not in school with us. So for me, in high school, I watched my peers being called out of class to go to the counseling office to meet with the counselor. I had no idea what they were going for. I just knew that they were going to the counseling office. Sometimes I thought they were in some kind of trouble. And then they would come back and I would hear them talking about college or about scholarships and things. And I remember a few times thinking, oh, they're going to call me one of these days, right? And my turn will come up. But it never happened. And I never talked to my parents about it. In my home, we didn't talk about that. I think, and I never asked my parents, but I think that for them, their goal was for their kids to graduate high school because they didn't. And I don't think they dared to dream of college for us. So I actually did not go to college right out of high school. I did not start college till I was in my 40s. So that is the reason for me why I'm so passionate about the work that I do and why I love working with these high school students and young college students, is because, like I said earlier, I want to be that person for them that I didn't have in my life. I want to be that person for their parents that my parents did not have, that's asking those questions. What are you going to do? Do you want to go to college? Let me help you do that. You don't? You want to go to work at Tyson like your parents are? That's fine. That's good and honorable work. However, if you think that you want to do something other than that, let's explore. Let's talk about some certificate programs or something else that you might want to do. But it's being there for them to help them do whatever it is that they want to do, right? So that is an obstacle that I had, is just that my parents not knowing and me not knowing and being one of the few brown people in my school. So I was one of those underserved, underrepresented students that I now serve.
Knowing that you had options, Juanita.
Right.
And I'd like to add to that, I know that one of the hurdles that I myself had whenever I was trying to come to college is my parents did not know how to help me. It's not that they didn't want to help me, they just didn't know how. I know the educational system here and in Mexico are totally different. And so their way of saying we got you is by saying, mija, chale ganas, you got this, girl. We're backing you up. But it was not ever coming to campus maybe and talking to financial aid. It was never maybe coming to campus and talking to my advisor, and just knowing and understanding that, you know, they were still with me at 100%, but yet it was up to me. And so that was one of the hurdles that I know that I went through as I tried to come to college.
I agree with that 100%.
Jahida, you're in the group chat asking if I wouldn't mind telling you about how we grew Fiesta Fest. Yes, I love talking about Fiesta Fest. This is actually one of our ambassadors at the time. So let me tell you about Fiesta Fest just real quickly. So it started as a small idea as to how are we going to raise money for students of the college that are non-Pell eligible. And yes, at the time it was probably focused on DACA recipients. But we end up saying, you know what, it's not just DACA recipients that would benefit from this. We need to open it up to any non-Pell eligible, because we also have those students that, because mom and dad make too much, they may not qualify for financial aid. And so it started out as a small idea. I know that we had student ambassadors. No, sorry, we had Student Diversity Association that was already selling tacos on campus for Cinco de Mayo. And then when I came on board, I thought, hey, why not expand this to the community, get the mayor involved, get the chamber involved? And so we started talking to key people in the community. We started sharing this idea. In the first year, we actually held it across the campus. We have a huge green, open, beautiful area by the park, and we end up doing it there. We actually paid somebody to bring rides for kids, and so we had rides available for people, and then we also sold spots for community members to sell whatever food they wanted to sell. And so what they were paying to pay for the spot was actually going towards this. Now let's talk about how did we pay for the rides and whatnot. We actually found sponsors, and by having sponsors, that would help cover the cost of the rides, so that at one point, whenever we had the community come in and they would buy bracelets for the rides, all that would go towards the donations. Now let's talk about also how did we have the manpower to work all this, because it sounds fun and it sounds like it was just so easy to do. Y'all, we depend on our student organizations. So we have ambassadors on campus. We had Student Diversity Association also on campus, as well as other student groups. And that day, what they do is their way of giving to other fellow students is by donating their time and taking the tickets, or selling the tickets, or selling food. And so we also have a basketball team on campus. They also are there that day. And so anything that needs to be worked manpower wise, we get it from our student groups, and it gives them a sense of happiness knowing that they're helping their peers. And so it's grown so much to where, like I said, now we have up to maybe a little more than 2,000 attend per year. We have entertainment on stage. We have people that are bringing live bands. We have a DJ that is always looking forward to this event, and he's donating his time. We also have a 5K. That's another way to raise money. We have a 5K, and we make it a huge deal when they're starting in the middle of this whole festival, and we're all clapping for them, and we're putting music on, and then we say 1, 2, 3, go. It's just so exciting. It's just such an exciting time. But yeah, we definitely, we depend on students, friends of the college, and then we also depend on sponsorships to make that happen. And like I said, once all that money is counted, it's divided up between student ambassadors, because we have student ambassadors that are getting paid to be ambassadors of the college and be the face of the college. But once again, we can't use federal money for some of the students that may be DACA recipients. So guess what? We don't turn anybody away. This money from those scholarships I actually also help students that want to be, or that are DACA recipients that want to be an ambassador. It also goes to Student Diversity Association, and it goes to our foundation, which is actually the one that actually uses that money to provide the scholarships for non-Pell eligible students. And so it's divided up in those ways. I hope maybe I answered that question, Jahida.
You answered that perfectly. I like that. That's something we should do.
It's great. You get the community involved and they all understand. And whenever we open it up to all non-Pell eligible students being able to apply for these scholarships, we saw even more help come through.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
Ooh, Nicole, thank you for that. I love that recommendation. She's in the group chat and she mentioned great book about torn between the world they were raised in and the life they aspire to. They hoover between worlds, not quite accepted in either. That's going to be an interesting read. Thank you.
We have a question from Anna Powell. The question is, what percentage of your enrollment is DACA?
You know, I've not checked the numbers for this fall for me. Juanita and Marcos may know for their institution, but I know for the community itself, we're at 60% Latinos. At the college level, we actually are at 28% Latinos, and we are actually currently the only Hispanic serving institution, the only HSI in the entire state of Arkansas. I believe the last time I checked, we were at 20 DACA students. I believe we were at 20 students that were DACA recipients, but at overall Latino percentage, we're at 28% and have maintained that for now for 4 years.
We're trying to get to that 25%. We're really hard. We keep staying in that 23 mark. Gosh, that needle moves slow. I know, it's so hard. Especially when it depends on the rest of the enrollment, right? So what percentage of that? As far as DACA students, you know, honestly, I don't know. We don't keep track specifically of who has DACA and who doesn't. We don't ask them what their status is. I know we have both undocumented students and students that have DACA, but it's something that we don't keep track of. We could go in there and, well, we couldn't even with DACA. We can be able to look to see how many have applied for the in-state tuition that also kicked in a couple of years ago. But I know that not all students even have applied for that. So yeah, I really don't know.
And the tricky thing about that is they have to self-report.
Exactly.
That's what's real tricky about it. And I know that one of the ways, and I know that last I checked, we had about 20, and this is how I know we got that number. In admissions, when a student comes in, you're asking them for admissions documents, and a lot of them bring their DACA card, their work permit. Also in our application, we do ask to better serve them. We say and they don't have to answer it. We make it very clear, but to better serve them, if we know that they are a DACA recipient, then we know that we can better serve them by maybe touching base or emailing, hey, there's this scholarship that just came out with HWOA. $1,000, make sure y'all apply. So, but yeah, the tricky part of that is they have to self-report in order for us to know that. So it's a tricky question, but yes.
Okay, so since there's no more questions, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Christopher Smith.
All right, thank you so much, Yahara, and thank you to our panelists. Let's give them a virtual round of applause because this was just such a great, robust discussion and fitting not only for Hispanic Heritage Month, but for every day. Because every day we have students who we may not know their status or whatever the case may be, but they need to know that individuals here care for them. And so thank you all so much for that. And we will definitely be in touch to kind of partner together and learn from each other to create a more inclusive campus for all of our students. And so thank you so much. And to Yahara, thank you for doing a wonderful job as the moderator, and to piggyback off of Marcos, who stated that, yes, this Saturday we'll be showing the free showing of cocoa to the community here, and that money, as he alluded to, will be going towards scholarships for students of Hispanic and Latino descent. And so it's all about taking those proper steps in order to be of service to everyone and fulfill not only our mission at UAHT, but others across the great state. And I see Juanita has her hand raised, and so I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that I put this in. I put my email address in the chat. I am welcome to anybody if you want to reach out to me with any questions about my program. I really was I didn't say a lot about it, only because I can go on all day long about it. But if you want more information about how we do it, it's a lot of work, but it pays off, and ways that we work with our community to help fund it, because I have a really teeny budget from my college. Most of it is funded by corporate and community groups. So if you have any questions, or also how we serve our Latinx and or DACA students or undocumented students, I'm welcome to anybody if you want to reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And this now will conclude our Courageous Conversations panel discussion. Once again, thank y'all so much for participating, and thank you so much for everyone that was in attendance today.